Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Here with your host today, Richard Fu from richardfu.com. And today, guys, I have a special guest who's just, she's patiently been waiting for me here while I've been trying to get into the office. And I'm excited to have her in because when I saw her profile, I was like, oh my God, she's just like me, right? She's gone in, she was a full-time teacher, she worked her heart out, and then she became a freelancer and then transitioned her way into becoming I guess you could call it the digital nomad, the ultimate freelancer, the six-figure freelancer, working her way and building a huge remote team, which is exciting and shows so much possibility here for so many people just like myself and others. And most of all, I just am excited to have her on because I'm excited to learn about her story, how she got through it, and how she actually started building a team so that she could actually be free and rather than be self-employed. So her name is Laura Pennington. She is the six-figure freelancer, and I can't wait to have her on. Anyway, guys, here she is. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We're more pumped to have you here, so it's awesome to have you in. So, Laura, for the people who are watching and listening here, who haven't heard or seen much of your work, could you share a bit more about yourself and how you actually help people?
Sure. So I used to teach middle school in Baltimore, which is a pretty big city over here in the United States. And it was a really stressful job. I went into it with a master's degree and I had taught at my university before that at the college level. But that job burned me out faster than anything I'd ever done before. It was very common for me to work 16, 18 hours a day and always feel behind. And so I realized that wasn't going to work anymore. I'd prepared my whole adult life to be an educator. And at 26 years old, I was going, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was trying to find something else that would be a good fit for my talents and sort of stumbled into freelance writing, not expecting it to be anything more than an extra way to get some grocery money. And it sort of exploded from there. My business grew very quickly on a part-time level. And then I ultimately sort of scaled it into full-time and have been doing that since 2013. And now I help other people do the same thing, whether it's becoming a freelance virtual assistant or a freelance writer.
Oh man, that's such a beautiful story. And I love how you compactly tightened that up. I'm sure, as the writer that you are, you've done it so well. And so talk us through this. I mean, Laura, like what made you decide to actually try out to be a freelance writer first? How did that even come into your mind in the first place?
Well, this is something I talk a lot about because I think everybody has these mindsets that you have to have a master's degree in creative writing or fine arts, or that you have to have been paid to write before, you have to have worked for a newspaper. I hadn't done any of that when I got my start as a freelance writer, wasn't even involved in my college or high school newspaper or yearbook, none of that. The only reason that I decided to pursue freelance writing is because I'd wanted to be a writer since I was little, but I had a number of professors in college, one of whom even tried to convert me over to the English department. And he said, you're really passionate about this. You're good at it. And they just encouraged my writing habit and skill. And I thought that was something that I could begin to use to make money, but also to have a creative outlet and to do something different than my day job.
Nice. And then how did you find, and this is a question I think a lot of people here are probably facing here. And you said you work like 16, 18-hour days. How were you able to find that time to actually write freelance writing while you're doing your day job at the same time? Because I'm sure many people watching and listening here are facing that same dilemma where they think they just don't have enough time. How did you etch out that time?
Yeah, so what happened with me was I actually resigned my position as a teacher. It started to take a toll on me physically. I actually resigned for medical reasons because I was just facing exhaustion and I had sprained my ankle and I had all these other medical issues that was my body's way of telling me you're done. You have to leave. And so I took a month off. And during this month off, when I had resigned, I started really thinking about, okay, where am I going to go from here? This plan to be a teacher didn't work out. And then I was offered a position with a firm that I had worked with prior to being a teacher and would just be working 8:30 to 5. And I thought, okay, this solves my immediate crisis of I need an income. It wasn't a terrible place to work for. I knew the people and the procedures already. So I took that job knowing that I would have my nights free, I would have my early mornings free, and that I would have my weekends free because I only intended this to be, a couple of hours a week. I thought it'd be great to make an extra couple $100. And it just sort of exploded so quickly. And that's what's great about freelancing. You can make it work for you as much or as little as you want.
I love that. And I love the example you bring up here is that you actually went and got another job that actually gave you that freedom. And this is so important. I think this is really important here, that most people still stick into their job, even if it gives them no time, because I think there's a fear that they won't find another job. And they won't find another job that will give them that freedom that they want. And I love that you brought it up, because it's the same story as me. You know, I was working at a consulting firm, 12, 15 hours a day. And then I got to a point where I was like, this is not what I want to do. And if I want to go expand and do business, it's not to go quit and entirely jump both feet in without any idea. It's to let's just slowly build something up to see if it's tested and it's proven and it's working. And I think that's the motto here I want to bring through with your story, Laura, is that you are actually building it up. And then to talk us through this, you're building it up, your freelancing gig, and then eventually talk us through that point in time where you're like, actually, I can make this a real thing. And this is actually could be my full-time job.
Yeah, so it scaled up pretty quickly. In about 3 months, I couldn't take on any more freelance work because obviously I had working hours that I had to be at another job. So that's when I realized, okay, if I'm fully booked part-time, is this something that I could actually bring to the full-time level? But like most people, I was nervous about giving up the security of the paycheck that's deposited every 2 weeks and the health benefits. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you create your own paycheck, and that can be a blessing, and it can also be a challenge. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't jumping into something too soon where I didn't know if it was actually going to last. So I wanted to see how it would work month to month. Can I replicate this every single month? Was this just a fluke? Do clients only hire freelancers, in the fourth quarter and then nothing else the rest of the year? So I stayed at my job for a total of 1 year after I started freelancing. And when it got to sort of what I would call the breaking point, first of all, I was dreading going to my day job. I mean, it wasn't a terrible job, but little things that had only been an annoyance before were like full-blown aggravating. Like someone who would play music all day at their desk, I would just be like, I can't handle this. And I was so excited about going home and doing my freelance client work. Over my lunch hour, I'd be brainstorming for my clients or jumping on the phone with them. And it was clear that I had a lot more passion for doing that. So it just sort of opened my eyes to starting to think about the next step.
I love that. And I love how you broke it down into certain parts or phases that you actually experience, where you wake up and you say, you're not thinking about your day job anymore. You're like, what am I going to do once I get home and do this and do this? And how can I get more productive? And this is interesting here, Laura, is that, you're doing a full-time job and then you're doing another, I'll say another full-time job. We say it's part-time, but when you're starting it up, it feels like it's 2 full-time jobs at once, doesn't it? And so this is a huge difference that I see, is that because it gave you so much creativity, so much flow, so much happiness and joy, even though you were working probably more than your first job, that first job where you were burnt out, you didn't feel burnt out, did you? I mean, not all the time. There are parts, I'm guessing, where you did feel tired and exhausted. Yeah. But tell us, how did you get through those moments? And what kept you going?
I mean, the biggest challenges I think I faced were, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I mean, I was totally self-taught as a freelancer. So I learned some hard lessons and some things, those first couple, those first 6 months or so, I felt great that I had the security of my day job because I made some pretty epic mistakes in my freelance business. I took on some bad clients, had some bad experiences, took on projects that weren't the right fit for me. And in that moment, I was super grateful to have my day job because I thought, well, if this all goes up in flames, at least I have a backup plan. But once I took the lessons I learned from those bad experiences and applied them to my business moving forward, I realized that I just had to be very conscious about who I chose to work with and the types of projects that I worked on. And that way I was only allowing ideal clients and projects into my world. And that made me even more excited. And one of the things that really propelled me was the fact that clients were loving my work so much. So, sometimes in your day job, you get a lot of negativity, right? Like it's constantly like, you're not doing enough, you're not productive, you seem distracted, we're not selling enough, whatever it might be. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're having that one-on-one conversation with somebody else who's thrilled that you did something on deadline, that you did it well, that it met their exact needs, you kind of feel like, wow, this isn't just a fluke. This isn't just, random. My clients actually really love what I'm doing and they want to work with me again and again. A lot of my freelance writing clients have been with me for 12 to 24 months for that reason. And building that relationship with them, the fact that they want to continue working with me is huge. Like, it's really motivational.
Nice. Wow. And it just excites me just to hear you share that, because it's such a big deal. Is that I think most often this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go start my own thing too, is because I couldn't see that real impact. And you don't get to see that, how much of a big difference you actually make for a client when you're, working with someone else, because it's just, you usually put it in the back office, or you're shrouded away from them, and only the boss gets to get the good news. Then the boss comes up and tells you, yeah, Laura, good job, right? Client's happy, and that's it, right? They don't give you that detail where the client explicitly is saying this is what makes the difference. And next question I have here for you, Laura, we talk about freelancing and how, describe to me, like you said that you learned a lot of huge, lessons through your first 6 months in freelancing. What's the biggest lesson that you could take away and share here with someone who's thinking about jumping into being a freelancer, whether it be a designer or writer?
Yeah, be really mindful of how you set your business up. So you could set yourself up to be the freelancer working 80 hours a week with the client who texts you all the time, with the people who are overbearing and not paying you enough. I think we see a lot of marketing messaging today that you want to work with everybody and you should always be focused on the yes. And the biggest lesson in my business, the one that took me from this being a part-time job to this being a six-figure and staying there venture, was the word no. Knowing and trusting my intuition when I make a point to try to get on the phone with a client if I'm not sure if something is the right fit. And I really trust my intuition in that moment of, is this someone I can handle talking to on the phone regularly? Is this somebody who's going to drive me crazy? Is this a project where I'm being paid fairly for my time? I'm very specific about who I choose to work with. The person who wants to be in touch 24 hours a day, I'd always tell my clients, when I'm working on your project, I'm working on your project. I'm not taking phone calls. I'm not answering texts. I'm not answering emails. So in order for me to give you that focused attention, you need to give me that space to be able to do that. And because now my entire client roster is only ideal clients, so they all know how to work with me. I know how to work with them. They get their content done on time and the way they need it presented. But I don't have to worry about that stress of being micromanaged, because I don't know about you, but I hated that at my day job. I just could not handle someone else telling you what to do, how to do it, when to do it. So that would be my biggest lesson. Be comfortable with saying no when someone isn't the right fit.
I love that. There's a huge lesson here in that, guys, because even if you say there's a saying, it's if you say yes to something consciously, then you're subconsciously saying no to a lot of other things. Right?
Yeah.
And how did you actually define the type of client that you wanted? I'm sure you had to go through a lot of experiences first to figure it out. And then if you have that first initial meeting, what usually triggers for you whether this is an ideal client or probably not?
Sure. So what triggers for me whether it's an ideal client or not, I actually have an avatar. It's actually a person in my head. I've given them a name. I know all their pain points, where they're at with their career and their business and why they're reaching out for a freelance writer. And so I can usually tell when I'm on the phone with one of those ideal clients. And then somebody who's not the right fit for me, if they're haggling about price right away, if they're instantly give me a discount, if they're instantly sort of pushing my buttons, if they ask for 6 rounds of revisions, which should never be necessary on most pieces of content, that's just a red flag to me. Anyone who's hired and fired multiple other writers, I'm very hesitant about ever getting involved in that mess, because I always feel like I'm just going to be the next one to be let go, and that it's a real problem with the client, not the writers. So for me, that process partly was trial by fire. I brought on about 2 or 3 people when I got started that I was just so excited that they said yes to me and working with me. And then realized from those experiences, okay, these are the qualities that I absolutely don't want. The customer is not always right. So I'm going to make the decision about who's the right fit for my business. And what you said is so key, because there's only two things we really control: our time and our energy. And if we allow them both to be absorbed by people who are not the right fit, you are therefore closing yourself off to every other amazing opportunity that could come your way. So don't fill your day with those people, leave open the space for the really awesome people. And that can be hard to do, to say no and to hold the space for somebody else, but it works really well. Every time I fired a client, every single time, I have replaced that income in like 48 to 72 hours, like no problem. So I feel it's like the universe's way of saying, yep, right call. That was a good choice.
And cheering you on, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, Laura, talk us through the next phase here where you decide to quit your job, right? And talk us through what was going through your mind when you're like, oh my God, like for over a year now, this has been making pretty good money, and I think it's time. What stopped you from actually saying, let's do another year, right, of me working full time? And what made you go finally just in, and then tell us what happened?
Well, there were a couple of things that sort of led up to it. So one was I got offered this really amazing speaking opportunity. I was developing and delivering leadership content for high school students all over the US. And I got to travel 3 or 4 times a year to do that. And it was amazing. I got to speak to more than 5,000 high school students and talk to them about entrepreneurship and job interviews and goal setting and time management. And I loved it. I'm a total introvert, but flying to these conferences and presenting to these students it made me realize like how passionate I was about other things that had nothing to do with my day job. Writing for clients, delivering these presentations was like a love thing. And then my job was like, yeah, I go here to pay my bills. And so that was sort of the first catalyst. And my boss had approved me doing this, speaking opportunity, but it was like very tense when I would go do it and I would come back there was always drama, like someone had always gone through my desk trying to find evidence that I hadn't done my work or something crazy. And it was just like, wow. I always felt like I was defending myself and like they were looking for reasons to be unhappy. And everyone in my world, my fiance, who was my boyfriend at the time, and my mom was like, Laura, you can do this. My mom even said, Laura, you're young enough where if you go out and do this and you fail tremendously, you can recover from that. She's like, you can recover if this doesn't work, but you've got to try it. And so after my last conference that I went to go present to in July of 2013, I flew back, and it was a Friday, and I was like psyching myself up to go deliver my 2 notice, right? I was like, I was so nervous because even though I was making decent money with my freelancing part-time, the fear of losing that security for me, I was really triggered with that. And so, I went to go deliver my 2 weeks notice. My boss actually fired me. In hindsight, they did me a favor, cut short the awkward 2 weeks of me working there, and, paid me severance, and I kept my health insurance for another 30 days. So for me, that was the wake up call. That was, okay, now you have the time. So let's do this. And it really ignited a fire for my business.
And I know this feeling that you went through too, because I had that same feeling too. I was like, and I guess for you, it might have been a little bit easy because your boss wasn't as, supportive of that. Yeah. And I was in a different, but my boss was super supportive of what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh my God, how can I leave it when I got like the most awesome boss right now? But when you make that leap, it's completely different. Then how did you transition? Because obviously going from employee to entrepreneur, the first few months are a bit hard. And tell us some things that you did that made it, I guess, easier for you, or if you were to advise other people who are going through that journey, how they can do it in the easiest way possible.
Yeah, the most important thing that helped me was I had 2 clients who were on recurring contracts. So I knew immediately that I was going to have some income, right? So even though I left my job very suddenly, I had those 2 contracts. And then I sat down and had like a real conversation with myself. Okay, how much do I need to make every single month to clear my expenses, to clear taxes, to be able to pay my bills and do the things that I want to do? And then I kept that number in the back of my head constantly. And I used to have these notepads that would be filled with all the business I had on deck. So every project that I was waiting for payment to clear, or that I needed to deliver yet, so that I knew every single month, am I on track for my goals, or do I need to go back and market more? And, at first I was so resistant to the idea of having office hours, because I was like, I'm a freelancer. I want to work like 2 hours a day when I feel like it. But I started treating it more like a business. I would always start work by like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would work until at least 2. So I had like at least several really focused hours in there. And that helped make the transition easier. And, I reached out to all my clients who'd ever worked with me at that point and said, hey, I'm full-time now. If you have more projects for me, or if you know someone who might be a fit, and that really helped me fill my calendar pretty quickly.
Nice. And then not only that, I mean, Laura, you haven't stayed as self-employed and the continuing to be the solo freelancer. You've currently actually expanded your team. And talk us through that. Talk us through how you decided, you know what, I'm actually doing everything by myself right now. This is not the way I dreamed my business would be. So how did you start expanding?
Yeah, in 2014, that was I hit the 6-figure mark about August, September of that year, and was thrilled with that, because that had been my goal. I had specifically said, all right, I really want to break 100K. And I did. And then I realized this is exhausting. And I've recreated my teaching job again to an extent, because I'm going to burn myself out. And so I started, I had a mentor at the time, who I was actually doing some writing for him and for free. And in return, he was mentoring me. And we had this one conversation where it was so silly. At the time, we were talking about, should I buy a lawnmower, pay somebody to mow my lawn? And he's like, Laura, that's a $15 an hour job. Like, what are you charging? And I was like, well, like between $50 and $100. He's like, you're spending 3 hours doing that is not worth the $300 you could lose when you should be spending that time talking to clients. And that's when I really started to see a virtual assistant as an investment rather than an expense. So I started off with just one VA. She helped me like 5 hours a week doing administrative stuff, proofing my blog posts that I was sending to clients, doing research, pulling down statistics that I needed. And that really showed to me the power of outsourcing. And I really grew my company from there. And now, if it were not for the people on my virtual team, I could not get done. Basically, we're running 2 businesses, we're coaching and other people and things like that, but also doing the freelancing.
And I love that you brought up this really big mistake that most entrepreneurs make and business people make, is they don't know the real value of their time. They don't know how much their time actually costs them. And it's not whether, you could get another client in those 3 hours of someone, doing the lawn mowing, but it's more about like, what else could you be doing? I mean, how much, if you had those 3 hours back to be with your family, you had those, those weekends back to go be on vacation, actually real vacation when you're not having to work, how much is that really worth to you? And I'm glad that you hit on that and you brought that up, because so often, so many people think, it's better that I do everything myself, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and a lot of us start our business that way. We build it as solopreneurs. We're used to it. We like things done our way. And there's a little bit of a control freak thing in there where you're like, oh, if I give it to someone else, they're just going to screw it up. And so that's how I got my feet wet, basically training virtual assistants on my team and figuring out sort of best practices for training people. And once you let go of that mindset that you have to do everything yourself, you actually come to realize that there's a whole lot of things you don't need to be doing, right? Our core zone of genius is actually this really small selection of tasks, and everything else around it, you don't need to be doing that. You can let somebody else handle that on behalf of you.
And I love that you bring up that small core zone of the genius, because it's our tagline with our new business is all we want to do is help business owners stay in that genius zone.
Yeah.
You could be great at heaps of things. You could be excellent at a ton of things, Laura, but why be excellent? Why be great when you can just be your genius and stay in there, and then get all these other people to come in, and maybe what you're excellent at is they're a genius at, or what you're excellent at is what they're good at. And this is the big thing I've found. I want to touch in here as my last question to you, Laura, is with building your remote team, I mean, what's one of the biggest keys or lessons that you've learned when building your remote team and having them support you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, but I think don't be afraid to work with new people who've never had experience before, but learn you know, you're not just hiring a person to do tasks. You really want somebody who understands your personality. So actually all of the VAs on my current team were brand new when I hired them, had never done anything like this before. And two of them are like new within the past 6 months. They're just getting started. And the reason that I hired them was because I saw the potential, and that the fact that they were also invested in my vision. It was more about, okay, give me it was less about, give me my task, let me do what I need to do, and then I'll invoice you for it, as opposed to them seeing things in my business like, well, Laura, wouldn't this be a better way of doing that? And if we do this long term, we should really follow path XYZ. And having other people who were excited about my vision showed to me that it was well worth my investment in training them how I like things done, because they actually care about my business. So don't be afraid to work with new people. Just make sure that they understand your vision, they understand your personality and how you give instructions and things like that. But that's been a big deal for my team.
I think that's huge advice, because that's how we like to hire as well. It's not just purely on your experience, but it's about the attitude. It's about how you show up to work and just what you want to contribute to it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah. And Laura, it pains me that we're going to start wrapping up the show here, because I'm just having so much fun just learning from your own experiences and how you've developed your own business. And as we start wrapping up, we're heading into our quick fire question rounds. Okay. And we're going to start with my favorite one, the signature one here on the show, is what we call the time travel moment. All right. So Laura, if you could go back to any moment in your life and talk to little Laura and give her one piece of advice that you know today, when would you go back to, and what would you tell her?
Oh boy. I guess I would go back to college age Laura, because that's when I started realizing that I was a bit of an odd duck. I knew in college that I was not a 9-to-5 person. I didn't follow that intuition. But yeah, definitely back in college. It's okay to be an odd duck. You're actually going to do much better doing that.
Awesome. I just got a question. Like, how did you know you weren't the 9-to-5 type of person?
Intuition. I just I saw my parents and people that were older than me that had kind of gone through college and graduated, and I just sensed, that there was something else for me, sort of off the beaten path, but I didn't know what it was. So.
Okay, great, awesome. Next question I have for you, Laura, is, as being a writer, I'm guessing you read a lot of books as well. And I'd love to know if there's absolutely one book that was a total must read, what book would that be?
Well, I strongly recommend this book called The Big Leap, because it's all about the mindset and how we actually self-sabotage ourselves from success, from happiness, from day-to-day joy. And it's all about being in the moments of gratitude and excitement about your life and accepting them, like not talking yourself out of it or diminishing your accomplishments by you saying, yeah, that's great, but I could have done better. Really just like lifting yourself up to the next level and not falling into that trap.
Awesome. We'll add that into the show notes. And the final question here I have for you, Laura, is like, so now you live a life where you feel like you're more on purpose, you're living the way that you want. I mean, talk us through this. I mean, like, when you first started this, what did it look like? And most of all, what does someone being on their true purpose looks like to you? What does that look like now?
I think that the reason that I went on the journey that I did was because there were aspects of both of my day jobs that I really didn't like. I didn't like having to be approved to go on vacation and only going 2 weeks a year. I didn't like that I had to sit at a desk until 5 if I was done at 2. So I really built a lifestyle business that allows me to go when I want to go, to work from anywhere. That was big for me. So as far as life on purpose and feeling like you're living your life on purpose, I feel for me, it's like opening a creative channel, because you're constantly thinking about where you're going from here. It's not just about this moment in the present, which you can very easily get stuck in a day job or traditional employment, opportunity. When you're on purpose, you're always thinking about the gratitude in the moment, but where am I going from here? What am I going to do with this? How am I really going to touch people and influence people with this message? And that is like a spark that I think you just have to find from within. And it's so cool when you do.
Awesome. I love it. And so, Laura, as we wrap up the show here, I mean, like, was there anything else you wanted to add or that you wanted to share that we didn't get a chance to talk about on the show here today?
Yeah, sure. My one big piece of advice for anybody, like no matter what it is you're thinking about doing, if you have that inkling that you've always wanted to start this side business, or you've always wanted to write a book, or you've always wanted to go skydiving, stop talking yourself out of it and just do it, because there's never going to be this perfect moment to build your business or leave your day job. You know, you've got to just sort of take the leap and push yourself to the next level.
Beautiful, love it. And so, Laura, for the people who want to connect with you and want to learn more about what you do, where's the best place they can find more information about you?
Sure. So all my writing advice is at sixfigurewritingsecrets.com. And then all of my advice about sort of entrepreneurship and digital team building is at betterbizacademy.com.
Awesome. We'll add that into the show notes. Once again, Laura, thank you so much for jumping on the show and sharing your story and your wisdom here for all the people listening here on our show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Awesome, guys. And so this wraps up another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast here with the six-figure freelancer herself, Laura Pennington. And I know this. She wants this. She wants this to not stay a secret. I don't want this to be a secret. This needs to go out there. This is a huge message for all the people who are trapped in their jobs looking for ways out. And she's made it happen. I've made it happen. And we're just examples of that. We need to spread this message out there. So I want you to go over to iTunes to rate the show and share this out so that we can actually get the message out there. Not just Laura's, but all the other guests we've had on this show as well. Give us 1 star if it was only okay because of me. Give us 5 stars if you think Laura was amazing and so much value added in here. Now, of course, guys, you can go and check out the show notes over at richardfood.com. And remember to go out there, go live with love, guys. Go smash it. I'll see you again on the next one. Awesome, Laura. Jeff.